Welcome to Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Body. That's me. This is a podcast that celebrates artists and advocates for community engagement. And like you, I'm home and looking to connect. And so we have partnered with Creative Generation to launch this video series called #KeepItMakingArt, where I'm talking to creatives who are making and sharing art, or they're advocating or guiding others to make and share their art. And so if you haven't already, please, let's do this. Let's subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're also on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now let's get to our guest. This person I met 2 months ago, I guess, in February when I was down in Florida. Let's welcome Andy Sandberg. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Courtney. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not in front of this beautiful beach, but I am on the campus in one of these buildings. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I actually don't see the building that I know you are in. Can you tell us
where
you?
I guess you probably have a mirror screen, but I'm over here in what is called the Palm House, which is our kind of admin house building. What you're looking at is the historic campus, which you obviously know very well. So over there is the Hermitage House. Oh wait, am I in the reverse direction?
I think you're in the reverse.
I am in the reverse. My gosh, that's hilarious. But in any event, this is the historic campus behind me, dating back to 1907 for the Hermitage Artist Retreat.
1907. Yes, so I learned of the Hermitage recently, sometime last year, and then got to visit for my first time this past February, right before all of sheltering in place was a very real thing.
Right.
And now we're 5 weeks out, almost more. And so how have you been? How are your family?
Good. My immediate family is actually up in New York, but thankfully safe and healthy, knock on wood, and I'm doing well. And I've certainly known friends and colleagues, unfortunately, who have been affected by the disease, particularly in the theater community, but and a lot up in New York. But other than that, I personally can't complain. I've had wonderful team to distantly and remotely work with, and I've gotten to reconnect with a lot of artists and members of our community, and also heard from a lot of people I haven't connected with in a while, and been able to kind of rekindle some of those relationships. I feel a little like there is this is a weird analogy, but a little like when social media first came about and all these people popped up to kind of say hey that you hadn't talked to in a while. I sort of feel like there's that element, but with an extra level of actual caring, because everybody has some kind of hardship or connection or link to the disease. But I was I am at the Hermitage generally, but I also am still a freelance director and writer and producer, and I was directing a show on the other coast of Florida at the Jupiter Theater, directing a production of How to Succeed when this all went down. So it was tricky because I was in the midst of tech rehearsals there, and also working with my staff. I was already, I guess, kind of remote, working with my staff from over there, and they were here. So trying to balance decisions about how we were going to handle that, and trying to monitor everything closely.
Right, and I recall when I think it was towards the end of my 2 weeks there, you were about to go and do that work, the directing work for How to Succeed. What is it? How to succeed in business without really
How to
trying.
succeed in business without really trying. Exactly. Too many words in a title, but so we just called it How to Succeed.
Yeah. And then I also recall you being watching you on Facebook and being really excited. And then when this happened, it had to shut down. And so can you talk a little bit more about the experience of directing? You already answered my question around what kind of artist you are. So what kind of work, what was the project? Who were you working with? And you already did sort of share the fact that you had 2 jobs at once.
Yeah, so well, while I was in rehearsal over there, I mean, How to Succeed is a big musical. So we had a large cast, I think it was 22, and a huge set and physical production. The Maltz Jupiter Theater is one of the larger regional theaters in the area. They do really wonderful work. And, you know, we had a huge crew. I mean, there were 100 of us working together because we were out of the rehearsal room and now in tech, all working very closely, intimately. And this started to become news while we were mid-rehearsal, but in that way that it was like, oh, is it a thing yet? Or is it just kind of a news item? It sounds scary, but Broadway's still open, so everything's fine. And then, like a lot of regional theaters or arts organizations, when Broadway shut down, that was kind of the indicator for, uh-oh, how do we have to address this? And down in Florida, candidly, I think everything was a little delayed. So there was a lot of uncertainty. We're here sitting by the beach, like everything seems great. The weather is wonderful. We're teching a show. Everyone seems healthy, and our 100 people working on the cast and crew and on the staff, and everyone's in good spirits. But we know this is kind of in the air, but none of us were feeling the direct effect yet. But of course, we were hearing the warnings and conscious, and we pretty much got through I've talked to a lot of artists in theater who've had different experiences. We were at our final dress rehearsal. We were ready to go to our first preview the next day, and that's when we essentially froze the show, and the theater got creative and worked it out with the unions that they could film it and share it, at least with people who had already bought tickets, since Florida is kind of a seasonal culture, so some people wouldn't be able to come back. But we are postponed, not canceled. You know, the theater was gracious and welcomed everyone to stay and invited us all to come back in the fall for a run. We're still settling the details, but of course, we're hopeful and optimistic that will be possible, and that audiences will be excited to come see this, because it was a great cast, great team, and we were all really proud of the work we were doing.
Yeah. I feel like I could ask a bunch of different questions, but I think this is the story for a lot of people, a lot of artists, that they were in the middle of a project and then it had to pause, and there's still questions about how things could proceed, and which we are aware of. And my brain sort of went to the beautiful beach behind you, and the fact that you said Florida was behind. I mean, one of the things that I recall is when I flew down February 10th, I believe, and there were people, it was mostly old people, like people who were older than me, on the plane, and there were definitely quite a few people who had masks on. And I thought, oh, that's good, they're protecting themselves. But it still didn't click or dawn on me then that I could potentially, like, somebody on this plane could be a carrier and that I could catch something. Like, that just wasn't a factor in my brain at that point, because it's so foreign to us, isn't it? And now it's like I don't even leave to go down to the lobby of my building without a mask on.
Yeah, no, nobody, I think, I don't want to say nobody, but most of us did not have a clear sense of just what was going on or how serious it was. And, you know, we obviously it's been around, and science has shown that, and it's been here. It's probably been here a lot longer than any of us realized, and a lot more of us have had it than we realized. But so many unknowns, and that the less certainty, the more scary. And I think that's when kind of people in artistic leadership and all leadership realms had to go, we have to look out for the safety of our communities.
So speaking of community, talk to us about the Hermitage Artist Retreat. What is the mission of the organization?
So the Hermitage is a multidisciplinary artist retreat, and it's for visual art, it's for music, it's for theater, it is for photographers, it's for arts educators, it's for truly all kinds of artists. It is for artists who are at a certain career level. It's not necessarily kind of people trying out their first hand. We are not a beginners organization, and I don't mean that in any pejorative way, but it's meant to provide artists a retreat opportunity that allows them to fully explore and develop the creative process. That's kind of what we consider our mantra. We say we're to inspire the artists, but it really is to support the artist's creative process. And the only shared experience we want all of our artists to have, whatever their discipline, is that they are walking out of here feeling like they have elevated their art, their work, their craft, and gotten something out of it. And that sounds fairly broad in a way, because it is. We don't mandate that you operate on a specific schedule or you deliver a certain kind of work product at the end of this. We do community engagement programs, but really it's about, we only take 5 to 6 artists at a time across our 9-acre campus. And deliberately, we try not to schedule it in a way that it's all theater people. It's not literature week. It's not, you know, lyricist week. It's not poetry week. It's not educator week. There are exceptions for particular programs, but mostly there's a wonderful commingling of people at the top of their game and great minds who can interact as much or as little as they'd like.
Yeah. So I'm a Hermitage Artist Fellow.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
a proud one. And I went down for my first, like I said, my first visit. It was 2 weeks. I think I get a total of 6 in a 2-year time frame. And I don't, I know for a fact, I had no understanding of what this was at all until I got there. And like you said, it is quite interdisciplinary. And I was there with some really amazing people who were doing, you know, amazing work in their respective fields, and I got to learn from them, and we sort of bonded. I would say, like, I'm still obviously, Adam has been a guest here, so I bonded with Adam, and then Julia Jordan,
Drama Desk nominee Adam
Guan. Excuse me, yes, Drama Desk Award nominee Adam Guan, who's amazing. And the head of the Lilies, Julia Jordan, she was also there. And what we discovered was we live 2 blocks away from each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and in fact, I was actually just talking to her right before this. So, that's the thing, is that you start to bond with the people that you're with. If they're from New York, you have an opportunity, if you do like them, to continue to build or foster that kind of connection that you can make. And for me, as a theater maker, I usually collaborate. So it was actually kind of new and liberating for me to think about, how do I, you know, really indulge in this time and this beautiful, you know, scenic gorgeousness that is Minnesota Key, to be able to think about projects that I could work on that are not about collaborating necessarily. And so for me, it ended up being a time that was very valuable to me for several reasons. I'd lost my mother recently, and so I'm still grieving, or in that grieving process, and so it was a rejuvenating time for me to just be away from, like, cut off from the rest of my life and just sort of focus there, and then to really foster myself as an artist when I am so specifically thought of as an arts educator and a leader in this field, that to just be treated like an artist was really, you know, felt very special, and something I sometimes forget. So there was a lot there. I'm sharing all of this to get to a question, by the way.
Sure, no, no, honestly, I love letting you talk about the Hermitage, because I think our artists all talk about it better than we can, and each in their own unique way that speaks to the testament of what makes it so special. You know, I can give you the mission and give you the talking points, but hearing people's genuine stories about what the Hermitage meant for them resonates in such a deeper, more powerful way.
Well, I think that, well, that's good. So I can definitely go on. I think what you were talking about, when people talk about artist retreats, it often can feel like a camp or school, or there's this, like you said, prescriptive nature to it, and it is maybe affinity groups. Whereas in this instance, it really is that as somebody who's going there, I have whatever my ideas, or I'm being, you know, like, just be a vessel, and like whatever comes to me. Like, there's the artist choice, and the other part of it is that by being there with other artists who are not necessarily in your same field, there is this opportunity, I don't know, my words, what's happening? There's an
Words are
opportunity
crazy.
there to cross collaborate or cross learn and peer sharing. And it's really lovely. On top of that, I don't like people telling me what to do. So I enjoyed that I got to create my own routines, right? And figure out what was going to work for me. And for me personally, it was going to the Y and swimming and having that time, that exercise, but also being outside and swimming and letting my mind, be able to work through whatever the things are, whether it was personal or creative. And a lot of people went for walks, long walks on the beach, and then they would come back and they would start writing or start creating or whatever it was, right? So there's a lot of possibilities for how an artist can create. Some people just wanted to read because they were writers, and the more they read, more ideas pop. So everybody was finding their own routine, and I found that very fascinating to see what other people's routines were.
No, the thing that we kind of consistently hear is that there is some kind of transformative and magical elements, and the latter of those words is harder to define, but one that we hear frequently, and also that people get more done in their weeks here than they might in years, and not in necessarily, I was trying to get X pages. Some people come with goals, some people just come with open minds. And
yeah.
I think there is a freeing nature to this process and what it allows artists to explore, or as you say in your case, to be able to kind of switch and focus to just one hat of what your talent and skill set are, or zero in on that. We have people who are multi-hyphenates who come here to say, you know what, I'm here to work on my lyrics. I might be a composer, but I'm here to do lyrics and think in a poetic mindset. So everyone has that, and that's really gratifying to hear, but we don't measure it with a measuring cup and demand you prove that. We even say the performances we do for our community, which are largely free, or programs we do, they're about inviting people into the process or bringing people into the schools in your case, or whatever it might be, where we don't want people to feel like the New York Times is coming and you're singing for your supper. That's not what it's about.
Well, I understand. I actually wrote an article. Okay, so here's some fun stuff. So I wrote an article about the experience that I taught in a Booker Middle School. Mm-hmm. And I was previously asked to write a review of Daniel Levy's book that was released in the fall. And Daniel Levy is also a Hermitage Fellow, maybe alumni now, but he wrote this book. I could do that.
Teaching Artist Companion.
Yeah, it's a Teaching Artist Companion. And I have a great picture of this book of me by the studios, so in front of like a palm tree. I'm holding up the book. But in that, so to just talk about like creativity, I was really stuck, again, in this grieving mode, and I said I would do this writing, and I was like, I don't know what it is, and I was sitting on that little porch on that lounge in front of the palm tree with a gecko running by, and it was like, oh, wait, like, Eureka! And I was like, oh, I'm teaching. Let me use the book to inform how I design that work and also respond in the moment and think about it through that. So that's what the article is actually about, is how this book, even for somebody who's quite veteran, working with a group of students who she never saw before and will never likely see again, how it informed what she ends up doing with her work, and how the book is actually a useful praxis tool.
I love that story, and just kind of the story of connection between our alums. And I saw that when you had Adam on, and obviously Eric Booth, who's one of our curators, and the connections that we either find or that form, and those kind of threads and stories of how people inspire each other. That's just really, really cool, and makes me feel very happy to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
No, that's why I think it's like you said, it's a magical place, and it creates ripples of creativity, inspiration, hope, joy, in ways that you can't anticipate, but by being a hub, I guess, of what you called about the creating special opportunities for the artist to have a special experience, that's really powerful. And that's actually what I don't know if I had a question before, but now I actually have a real question.
Perfect, bring it on.
So it's about how in this time, as so many organizations are having to pivot in many ways, are really dealing with some severe budget cuts and loss of income and that kind of thing, that they're having to make really hard and tough choices about who stays on and who doesn't. And often it's the folks who are working as artists, like you said, Broadway, even the commercial arts are having to say, sorry, you can't work right now, and if there's no income, we can't pay you. I'm sure that there's more to it than that, but I'm briefly saying that, or trying to keep it simple. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, how do we galvanize, how do we engage artists who have lost a tremendous amount or are very vulnerable in this economic downturn, to think about how do we move through this moment and beyond? How do we make change that we always wanted because we were scrappy and we figured out how to maneuver within a system that was set up against us, and now the system is completely collapsed, and so can we build a new system? Do we have to go back to the status quo? No, we shouldn't. So how can we, and really my question is not just broadly, but how can the Hermitage start thinking about how it can use its resources potentially for artists to have empowerment to think about how we make some change?
Yeah, and that's a lot of what we have been grappling with since all of this unexpectedness came about. We are, I'd say we have two components to what we do, right? There is the core artist retreat element of what we do, and I'm speaking just generally even prior to COVID-19. There's the core artist retreat, giving the artist the experience we were just talking about, that freedom to create. And the layout of our campus is actually such that is socially distanced prime. I mean, I have no doubt that will be able to come back, and we'll be able to find a way to give the artists that opportunity in the not too distant future, even if there might be certain modifications to how and what that means. But we are actually kind of an escape in some ways for that. The other piece of what we do, though, is the outward facing. It is the community engagement, the community programs, the events, and actually leading up to this, a lot of what we were looking at, kind of one of our mission and vision focuses, was trying to boost our visibility, make it clear that though a part of what we do may seem insular, we as an organization have no intention of being insular. We collaborate with all of the major arts institutions, not just in Sarasota County, but with major, concert halls, galleries, theaters, et cetera, up in New York as well, and publishing houses, et cetera. So our curatorial council, who sends us brilliant artists like you and others, it's a national and international quorum of leaders in their field. So to have that on pause and see what a lot of what we do is in reaction to our collaborators too, and in partnership with them. We had to postpone one of our key weekends. We give something called the Hermitage Greenfield Prize, and each year we collaborate with multiple partners. So this year we were going to be working with the Oslo Rep and with the two biggest art museums in town, the Ringling and SAM, and other organizations as well, and different events surrounding that. And we all collectively made the decisions that we needed to and that were safe and right for our community to postpone and or cancel certain events. But as we come back and we rebuild those partnerships and those programs, a lot is about seeing, taking each other's temperature. What are we comfortable doing together? And then of course, what is our community? What are our constituents? What are our audiences comfortable doing? And how can our artists engage with them in new ways? A lot of what we've been questioning and looking at are, let me frame this saying, I don't think any of us know month to month. We have contingency plans for A, B, C, D, but we can map them all out in detail, and but we're probably still going to end up in Z12. So I think we don't we know how we feel right now. I don't think any of us know exactly how we're going to feel 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and what the situation is going to be. There's so many unknowns. But what we are exploring, and the question that's coming up a lot, is what is this digital interaction, and where is it healthy? Where is it working? Where is it not? Where are we just jumping on it to do something? I have been able to engage with our artists at a deeper level than I have been. I only started actually here at the Hermitage at the start of the year, so I'm relatively new. I'm from New York, and I have gotten to know so many more of our alumni just in recent weeks through conversations and things like this. And it's interesting and exciting to see all the different ways people are reacting. Some are diving into their work like this is the time that we have to generate the most content. Some are writing about this situation. Some are avoiding it and writing only happy joy things, or creating happy joy things, as I call them. And some are trying to explore new ways to collaborate. Some are going inward, as they might do when they're here at the Hermitage, because they have this kind of isolated time to think and process. I think everybody is trying to just find their own best, most healthy, sane way to do this. That's been really interesting. And we're trying to raise the questions about how can we work together, not with a pressure of we must, we need this from you, but can we find the right way to engage our community, to engage students, to engage fellow artists? How can we support that? And how can we give you the space and support to do that? So that was a long-winded way of saying, I don't think any of us have a clear answer, but I'm excited by the possibilities and also still trying to gauge and learn myself what I think is effective and what's not. And we're having constant dialogue about that among our staff, our board, and our artists.
I think a couple points that you make that are really strong is, I've had to jump into action in quite a few ways, and in other ways have had a good stretch of time to think through, collect information, and try and process or analyze that information to think about what does make sense to offer as potential resources. And I'm thinking obviously in a K through 12 or pre-K through 12 realm in my role at the NUVIC, but the idea of like continuing to have dialogue and what is healthy and, for lack of a better word, sizzly, but in a good way, not just, it's splashy, but actually like what's going to generate something that can have resonance in terms of digital engagement, right? And then ultimately, when it comes to safety guidelines and whatnot, like how can the campus actually be a part of creating space for these dialogues to happen more in person. Again, thinking about the fact that whatever ideas happen in 1 month might need to shift in the next week or the next month, but that if you're opening up that space for dialogue, something can start to take hold.
Yeah, and that's really one of the things, again, prior to the virus that we were already looking at was, how can we raise questions in a way that others in our community don't necessarily have the freedom to do? We are, by being multidisciplinary, we're not competing against any theater organization or orchestra or ballet or anything. We're kind of collaborating with all of them. And I like to say we're Switzerland among them. And it's not a cutthroat competitive community, but obviously, people are going for the same target audiences, and we are kind of dipping our toes into all of them and saying, how do we raise questions about what art needs to be doing in response to this at the moment? I mentioned Eric Booth, who's our, education and arts education curator. And one of the things we've talked with him about is, with the artists coming in, how do we make sure that part of the dialogue and what they're willing and excited to engage in is how and what this digital impact will mean? Because, I've heard from a lot of my teacher and educator friends that the most stressful part of this is it feels like sometimes there's just stuff being thrown at the wall. And that's kind of what you got to do to figure out what is effective and what isn't, especially when something happens this massively and abruptly. But all right, now I think we're in that second phase where we're starting to learn from that. And, you know, now we know how to use the Zoom. So like I have my fun background, but, and I'm exaggerating and simplifying it a little bit, but I think people are growing accustomed to different avenues. And I do hope that we don't just default to this. You know, I don't want to lose the human connection. It's a debate we've had, you know, internally, and, you know, some go, I'm getting pretty used to this. I don't have to drive anywhere. It's great. And I go, I don't want to lose the human interaction or the live spirit. For me, capturing art on film, the excitement of when that even became potential was accessibility. But I don't think it should ever be instead of what we should aspire to do, which is putting community in a room for a shared experience.
Right. Well, let's end there. But before we end, can you put your, can you do the thing? Do the thing.
Oh yeah, I do have to kind of show off the fun campus. So yeah. I have a cool little aerial video here that lets me do that. So it's a little dizzying for a whole conversation.
This is so Minnesota Key is a little island. You have to go over a drawbridge, or there's two different ways, but you go over a drawbridge, and this, I mean, come on, it's paradise.
Yeah. So wait, the house I'm in is kind of over here. We're going to spin around it. This is a drone. I am not flying on a helicopter, as my staff likes to tease me whenever I use this. But we do have the Gulf right there, and on the other side is the bay. So I'm not meaning to show off. It was storming and raining here today, but this is a wonderful place to be isolated, and grateful to be part of this world.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself, but also having this conversation with me. And thank you all for watching. Remember that we also are a podcast, so if you haven't subscribed, check us out. We have lots of content there. We're also going to make sure that these conversations from the video cast are also previewed or shared there in the future. So that's on SoundCloud or Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. So remember, keep making art, and thanks for watching.